Yes, Baker from Florida, California, Virginia, Texas. You see in the back, Texas right here, Louisiana.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Drew Baker, and I am from Florida. Are illegal residents still considered constituents of their districts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Montreal, Texas. Was the illegal residency a problem before the amendment was passed?
I'm sorry, Delegate, I believe that's for non-technical.
Ryan Mocker from the California delegation. What will happen to the representatives who have gained their seats recently because of the influx of legal immigrants?
This will simply just be and the next census will be reapplied.
Andrew Range, Commonwealth, Virginia. How many legal citizens have been convicted of tax fraud? Legal citizens.
I do not know the facts.
Brianna O'Rourke, Louisiana. Thank you, Chair. How is the whole number of persons in each state currently calculated?
By census response.
Thank you.
Camilo Rivera, District of Columbia delegation. Just to clarify, so the 40% of illegal immigrants who do pay their taxes would not be considered when we're reappropriating our congressmen and women?
They're still in there. They're still under representation. They still have a senator or house rep, right? They still have a representative representing them.
Thank you, Author. With that, I regret to inform you that the time to come on debatable question is last. The Chair will now recognize the content speaker from the floor, not from the floor, from prior selection. Yes, Delegate, please approach the front. You have 3 minutes, which will begin when you address yourself.
Delegate Cominares, Wisconsin delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair. While I understand where this proposal is coming from, there are a lot of things that are not quite considered here. First of all, you cannot amend a constitutional amendment. That is not how it works. You need to pass a totally new amendment. For instance, there was an amendment on the floor of the 9th Congress repealing the 16th Amendment and in, changing it so that voting age would be changed from 18 to 16. It needs to be done that way. You can't simply just change the amendment. That means it has to go through the full process. You need to get 2/3 majority in Congress and then go on to every state, get 2/3 majority in all of their legislature. It needs to pass 38 states, many of which are getting benefited from this, and it's unlikely that they will even support it. There have been there are almost 2,000, or somewhere around 2,000 amendments to the Constitution, many of which have failed. When you look at how many amendments have actually been passed, it is less than 1%. It's very unlikely this would pass, considering very good ideas such as legalizing eminent domain, not letting government take private property and give it to other private corporations, as well as things as obvious as giving education to all child citizens and child labor. They have failed. What chance does this have? Also, this also meddles a lot with the objective of the census, which is very much to gain information. The census is even currently trying to reach out to undesignated voters to even write that, because there is no repercussions currently. It cannot be used against someone. Also, this is encouraging people giving people downside to the census, which is just supposed to be used for information. And it doesn't even count people who are not even able to vote, such as legal immigrants and felons. Last of all, you still need more representatives for the amount of people. As in Congress, the amount of representatives you have affects your budget, as Congress delegates state budget. So the more representatives you have, the more you can lobby for more budget. Why is this a good thing to us? Because you need to support that amount of population you have. Even though there aren't even though the legal immigrants aren't paying taxes, they still have a cost on the overall state. That many more people, you have to pay for their education. You have to pay for law enforcement for them. They still need to be covered, and even though they are not legal, and whether that is right or wrong, they still need to be paid for. It's just a feasibility thing. It's not, there's no other way to deal with it. It just has to happen. It's just, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with the idea of this. I do believe that these feasible options, it cannot be supported, and I urge you to vote con. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Chair O'Rourke has the pro and con speakers, each speaker present. Yes, Delegate. Delegate, you may begin when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cameron McVeigh, the Republic of Texas.
Representative democracy requires that those who are truly being represented be represented equally. And this proposal takes the necessary steps forward to ensure this throughout America. Now, fundamentally, in the current system, we're having unequal voting. Let me explain myself. In the Supreme Court case Reynolds versus Sims, it established the constitutional principle of one person equals one vote, where everyone has an equal vote for whatever thing they're voting for. The problem here, let me give you a hypothetical situation, how the current system, when we base apportionment off of population, it violates one person, one vote. You have two different congressional districts. Each one has 10 people of population, and they get one representative. There's a difference between population and the citizen voting population, the people who can actually vote. In one district, you have 2 people who can vote. In the other district, you have 8 people who can vote. Guess who actually has more percentage of voting, where the vote is actually not equal, in the place where they actually only have 2 citizens who can vote. There we have unequal representation of what's currently going on because of this. The Pew Hispanic Center notes that there's currently 11.6 million illegal immigrants who affected the 2010 census. This is currently going on in the status quo, and this proposal takes necessary steps to ensure equal voting and equal apportionment throughout America. But furthermore, delegates, I'd like to ask you the question, what is what's currently going on aiding illegal immigrants? Absolutely nothing. Because they do not actually have the ability to vote, their representatives can be from the far left, the far right, they could completely disagree with everything they've said. They are not being represented within Congress. There's absolutely no reason to keep what's currently going on within the status quo in here. It does not benefit anyone, it just hurts our representative democracy and the legitimacy thereof. I'd like to go over a previous con argument. Since you're saying that the census needs to have the illegal immigrants counted, what will happen on this proposal, they'll still be counted, they just won't be added for apportionment. So fundamentally, what we see here is that to uphold the legitimacy of our representative democracy, I'm strongly urge to vote for this proposal.
The chair will now recognize the con speakers, such speaker present. Anyone who has not spoken in plenary or GA. Yes, delegate from Maryland.
Errol Hood, Maryland delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair. I stand in opposition to this mainly because this actually makes the apportionment system more unfair. Right now, states such as California and Texas are actually underrepresented. This is due to the basic facts of how our republic works. There's currently a cap on the number of members of the House of Representatives, which I believe is 453, which is why we now do reapportionment as opposed to the old system of adding in congressmen. But every state is required to have one member of the House of Representatives. A state like Wyoming, with a population of roughly 575,000 people, has one representative for every 575,000 people. And states such as California and Texas, you have representatives for 1 to every 3 to 6 million people. What this means is that without these illegal immigrants which are getting counted, the actual legal residents and voters of Texas are actually getting less representation because they have fewer representatives despite having vastly greater populations. If we were able to remove the cap on the House of Representatives, which we can't because of effectiveness issues, then this might be a viable option because then we could simply add more people to Texas, California, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, New York to make sure that this remained fair. But we can't. Although this is a good idea, it simply makes the problem that it's trying to fix worse. Is there any time to delegate the former? But I did not reserve that.
You did not. The delegate has yielded his remaining time to the chair. The chair will recognize a pro speaker, such as speaker present. Once again, someone who has not spoken in plenary or GA session. Delegate from Washington.
Andrew Reed, Washington State Delegation. I reserve the right to yield my time to the representative from Massachusetts.
That's right.
All right, so this proposal makes a lot of sense because the way the current system works doesn't make any sense. Having someone who's here illegally, who has broken the laws of our country, included in the apportionment, just seems incredibly unjust, and I commend the delegate from Texas for coming up with this idea. It's fixing a flaw in the way our current system works. I yield my time to the delegate from Massachusetts.
Thank you, and through you, Sir Chair and fellow delegate Milioni, Commonwealth, Massachusetts. The process of amending an amendment, to be redundant, is clearly very complicated. Yet, this is simply a proposal in a mock government program. We are in North Carolina, not Washington, D.C. Thank you, and I reserve the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Amendments are now in order. Chair will now recognize the con-speaker, such speaker present. Delegate from New Mexico.
Elijah Candelario, y soy de Nuevo Mexico. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Morrow from New Mexico.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to first congratulate the author of this proposal. It made it to plenary. Personally, he's a great guy. But I do have a few problems with the proposal in question. I come from New Mexico, the only state with Mexico in its name. Now, my first point is that there's no way to prove how many illegal immigrants are actually residing in a state, only estimates, since it's not on the census. You don't have to say whether or not you're legal or illegal. Now, we know the number of non-census people that register every year through tax information and other statistics that come through being citizens. Now, undocumented immigrants aren't thieves of votes. They're not thieves of congressional seats. They are people just like you and I. They aren't Sancho, Pancho, and Juancho that jumped across the border. These are hardworking people that in my state drive cars, pay taxes, hold jobs, and contribute to American culture just like everybody else. They are integral to who we are as a nation. Now, I usually don't get passionate when I'm out here giving speeches, but this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I have friends who are illegal immigrants, friends who are disenfranchised by the government that they love and the only country that they've ever known. They pay regressive taxes, they participate, and we need to recognize them not only in Congress, but every single day and give them their dignity. I yield the remainder of my time tomorrow.
Maria Mara, New Mexico. Thank you, Sir Chair. So, we need to look at the feasibility of this. While it's a wonderful idea, it's exactly the issue with illegal immigration. That's where all the controversy stems from based on illegal immigration, is the fact that it's impossible to determine who exactly are illegal immigrants. This is a huge issue. And even if we were to determine who are illegal immigrants, some of these do pay taxes.
Thank you, Delegate. The time for your speech has elapsed. The Chair will now recognize the proponent speaker, is such speaker present. Chair recognizes Delegate Washington.
Washington, D.C. I reserve the right to yield time to Delegate Moore from Texas.
That's right.
I am in full affirmation of this proposal and would like to applaud the author for his efforts to give United States citizens the representation they deserve. I'd like to first start off with stating the definition of an illegal immigrant. It is a foreigner who has entered or resides in a country unlawfully or without the country's authorization. I don't know about you, but I do not like the fact that we are taking representation from full U.S. citizens and giving it to people who illegally and unlawfully enter our country, expecting to instantly receive the same benefits as if they were full United States citizens. Because of the last census and the inclusion of undocumented immigrants, Louisiana, Missouri, Montana, North Carolina, and Ohio lost seats in the House of Representatives to California, Florida, and Texas. The Constitution does state in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment that representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. However, I would like to point out that when the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, and the original Constitution itself was ratified in 1789. Not only was there no U.S. immigration law drawing the distinction between U.S. citizens and aliens, but the jurisprudence of equal voting rights among citizens was not even developed. This proposal is not saying that illegal immigrants shouldn't be represented, but what it is saying is that we are not going to jeopardize the voice of full U.S. citizens who work, pay taxes, and were born on American soil for illegal and undocumented residents. And I yield my time to the delegate from Texas.
Robbie Moore, Republic of Texas, thank you. I'd just like to address a few things that con speakers said. Texas and California, huge states with lots of illegal immigrants, are not being underrepresented right now. We have 36 House seats. Illegal immigrants are being represented.
Thank you, Delegate. The time for your speech has elapsed. The chair will now recognize your con speakers and speaker present. The chair recognizes delegates from the United Nations. Schwartz.
Schwartz, Model United Nations. Thank you, Sir Chair. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Allen of Wisconsin.
That's right.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Okay, well, as a New Jerseyan, I never expected to say this, but this is an issue of states' rights. The fact of the matter remains that these people are in the state, and that means they draw on the state's resources. When they go to the emergency room, they draw on state resources. They draw on the education funds of that state. True, they will not be represented by a representative. That is true. However, the interests of the state must remain represented in the General Assembly. That is General Assembly of Congress. That is what it is for. That is why it was established. The history of it talks about this. The history that the small states and the big states trying to get along by creating this, so that the big states had the power to represent their own interests. By taking these people out of the populace in the state, not only do you have to estimate the number of people, which is a problem because you may estimate wrong and thus cause more damage to a state or more good to one, but you will also be you will also be harming the democratic system that we use. The states have the right to have a voice in Congress according to the number of people in the state, not the number of taxpayers. I thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to the delegate from Wisconsin.
Sam Allen, Wisconsin delegation. Thank you, Chair, and the prior delegate. So we can't just pretend that a state does not have a larger population and therefore a greater amount of gravity within the United States. The fact is that illegal immigrants do indeed pay all of their taxes, and so their states are owed a greater amount of representation, and so they should be. Again, you can't ignore that there are millions of illegal but tax-paying immigrants that need governmental services in that state that they'd help pay for, such as funds for roads, job security, and inevitable costs that always come
with speech has elapsed, and the time for conference debate has also elapsed. We'll move to the author's summation, which remains in 2 minutes. Author, you may begin when you wish.
Thank you, Petersen, Republic of Texas. Let me first state something. Simply because you have less representatives doesn't change your appropriations. Your appropriations for funding stays the same. Your apportionment changes. Those are 2 different words. And let's be honest here. Do all legal residents pay taxes? No, but previous delegate stated that the census bases, we know how many legal residents are here because they pay taxes. They don't all pay taxes, but they still have algorithms and projections. I'm not a math major. I don't know how they do that. Also, yes, you can't technically amend the 14th Amendment, but if I was going to say repeal and then add another one, there's 2 separate proposals. Or at a mock conference, I had to get it into one proposal, and I couldn't write it in 2 separate ones, so I wrote with the idea of amending an amendment. Also, I agree with you. Everyone needs legal representation. But you know what's not fair is when residents of Indiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Montana, New York, Louisiana, and Minnesota don't get their representation. Texas, while we're in a bad economic state, I think we're doing okay with our representation. I think that my neighbors in the other states deserve their representation just as much as I do. Feasibility is easy here. It's a simple division number as to how many states get how many representation. But even more important is the national importance. I cannot think of something more important to our republic than your apportionment to your state. That is the crux and the foundation of what your say is in government, and I cannot think of one better. Politics and policy has been overridden with with cronies and unethical actions, and I ask you to make the ethical and moral decision here. When was the last time a politician did the right thing and gave up his say for his neighbor, his fellow countryman, his fellow citizen? As I quoted earlier, our founding fathers searched for the most efficient compromise at the time, and after the annexation of 37 states and changes in policy, we must alter our course again. So as Led Zeppelin says in Stairway to Heaven, yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on, and it makes me wonder. And with the last time that I get to speak to this conference, I thank you for the impact that you've made on me, because I hope I made an impact on you. So in everything that you do, finish strong, as 1 Timothy 4:12 says, let no one look down on you, but set an example of faith, love, conduct, spirit, and purity. I yield my time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Time for discussion on this proposal is elapsed. We will now move to a period of voting on proposal number 511. Will the workers please seal the chamber? Thank you. All those in favor of proposal 511's passage, please rise and signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, rise and signify by saying nay. Nay. This proposal does pass.